Nelson Mandela was a communist. Communism has well been described as the most savage mental virus ever to infect the minds of men in this world. Communism is the greatest murder of people in the history of this world. It has led to the death of roughly 100 million people, not killed in war, but murdered, starved and genocided by their own governments, as the nations that have been affected by communism implodes upon itself and the population suffers. Nelson Mandela was a devoted communist. The ANC is a communist government who in the time before they came to power in South Africa were funded and armed by other communist regimes. In Nelson Mandela's Rivonia trial, they entered into evidence a treatise Mandela wrote in his own handwriting detailing how to be a good communist. One of the Mandela quotes that the media loves is, "Education is the most powerful tool you can use to change the world." The education Mandela is talking about is communist indoctrination, making the populace God-hating, white-murdering, ANC-supporting, moral perverts and degenerates. Here are photos of him with his terrorist friend Chris Hani, who was a General Secretary of the South African Communist Party and also an MK terrorist who bombed civilians and tortured and murdered members of their own party when they disagreed with the violence they used. Here is a photo of him and his second wife, the murderous Winnie, with Joe Slovo, head of the South African Communist Party, standing before a communist flag. Every communist state was born in violence and is held together by fear and isolation, the same as the ANC does in South Africa. Communism has wrecked and ruined every country where it has raised its ugly head, and it has raised its ugly head in South Africa and is on the process to irreparably ruin this nation who was once a prospering nation. Communism is nothing more than a form of slavery, a religion without a God, an ideology in which the government is God, and that is why the abolition of religion, nationality and private property are communism's main objectives and what Mandela has instituted in South Africa. The basic beliefs of communism are: communism denies the existence of God. The state becomes a godlike father to the nation, rewarding those who support its ideals and punishing those who are against its desires. Communism has always been a mortal enemy to Christianity and Christian values, and that mortal enmity has been carried and borne by Nelson Mandela. The Bible says the fool says in his heart there's no God. God himself judges Mandela a fool. Communism is a religion based upon the worship of man. The leaders of the communist revolutions and their writers are exalted to a godlike status. There are statues built to them around the country. Children are taught in schools of their greatness and their wonder and the brilliance of their person. They put their faces on the money and in large posters in public places. Communism is the deification of man, sinful, evil, proud, corrupt, God-hating man. In communism, God is openly blasphemed and mocked. His laws are trampled underfoot. But those that speak out against his objects of veneration, these communist persecutors, who are nothing more than whitewashed criminals and thieves, are persecuted with violence or with words. Mandela's wife said already a few decades ago that people worship Nelson Mandela. She said he is just a man. Yes, a sinful and corrupt man at that, I will add. The Bible says you are to have no other gods before me. Communism promotes the worship of images and false gods and is an enemy to the one true God. Communism rejects the idea of a creator God who rules all things and deserves all worship and all service and will judge all beings. Communism says man is but a highly evolved animal. Though he is king of the jungle, he is no better than the other animals. Communists are opposed to the truth of God creating man and having a soul who will live in a separate state after death. hence them being enemies to Christianity. You see this belief in Nelson Mandela, in him opposing religious education in the schools, and you see his ANC persecuting the truth of the Bible in the Constitution, in the laws of the country, in the schools, even in people's own private homes. Communism and those who follow it are enemies of God, Nelson Mandela included, an enemy of Jesus Christ himself. Communism blames society for man's ills. Communism doesn't see man as a sinful being born in sin and corrupt that needs to be saved from the depravity of his own heart. They believe certain external circumstances have contributed to the evils of society, and if they address these external issues, they will bring in a utopia. Predictably, these fools have wrecked every country they have infected with the evil and dangerous belief, and there is no communist utopia in sight, nor will there ever be. The utopia communism brings in is poverty, oppression, murder, corruption, and ruthless self-deifying dictators, while the populace starves and the moral fabric of society is degraded, with the nation ending up an evil, corrupt, sin-sick society that implodes upon itself and buries the promoters of it in the ruins, along with the millions who followed that devil-concocted lie. Communism has no absolute set of right and wrongs. Since communists reject the Bible as authoritative, they instead make up their own laws which change as circumstances change. For communists, there are no moral absolutes. Since they deny the existence of God, they have no interest in the commandments of God. For them, something is sinful if it hinders the cause of communism, and something is right if it advances the cause of communism. This can be clearly seen in Nelson Mandela's degenerate views of life, his promotion of homosexuality and sexual perversions, his promotion of abortion and the murder of unborn babies, his promotion of pornography, his promotion of prostitutions, among other things, evil and wicked. In a communist society, the law of God must fall, that the communist government may stand. We won't go into these, but we'll go over them quickly. Communism enslaves the individual and takes away his right and his freedoms. You see all of these in South Africa. Communism takes away the freedom of religion. You may do what you want, but don't transgress those laws and those boundaries that the communist state has put down. Communists oppose a person's freedom of speech and the freedom of press. Communists take away the freedom to own property. You see that with the ANC government confiscating millions of hectares of farms. And communism is an enemy to their nation bearing arms. They take away the freedom to own guns because they do not want their population to be able to stand up against the evil regime. Communism is a belief that is controlled and influenced by Satan, and this belief was the foundation principle in Nelson Mandela's life, making him an enemy to Jesus Christ and a strong tool of Satan to incite people to rebel against God and run into everlasting damnation. Nelson Mandela was a communist, a cold-hearted, callous and corrupt communist.